4 times now. I used to be terrified to be alone. I didn't know what else to do by myself. I have decided to tell my story, and I've never shared with.
Jennifer Lopez decides to tell us her side of the story in This Is Me Now. This is basically a memoir of her love affairs throughout the years of her career. So Jennifer Lopez has been married 4 times, and in between those 4 times, she has had many relationships. A lot of her relationships have been with celebrities just like her. I thought this musical was very interesting because it had like this zodiac theme to it. She even wore this zodiac type gown of the zodiac calendar to the movie premiere, and I will be honest, I did not realize that Jennifer Lopez was such an astrology girly, but apparently she is, as she notes to talk about signs, energies of soulmates and connections, and missed opportunities in this musical.
Zodiac sign is Leo. We're known to be very loyal, very powerful. They say that we really love the limelight, but I don't know that that's true.
Oh, J-Lo, you know exactly that is true. Jennifer loves the limelight just as much as she loves love. And we could really see this through the energy of her past relationships. What's interesting about most of her past relationships is they all tend to be with celebrities that are kind of like her or people that she met through work, except for Alex Rodriguez. I was honestly certain they were probably going to end up because it looked like they had a good connection, but she went back to Ben Affleck. But what can we say? That love affair definitely lasted past a breakup and through a 2-year decade breakup. Wow. And a lot of people actually align that energy with the North and the South Node in their relationship. But we're not going to talk too much about her past relationships because, in all honesty, I tried to research them and I just basically could not keep up. This girl definitely gets around. One of the relationships that always has stand out to me was her relationship with P. Diddy. Or Puff Daddy, whatever he was called back then. And she had this scene in the movie/musical that really made me think that she was referring to him. They were in a glass house. A lot of people were wearing white, and it seemed to have a lot of turmoil in the scene. And it seemed like she was basically saying that there was a relationship that got very physical and got a little bit too heated where she had to walk away. I know she did refer to this also as one of her earlier relationships when she was younger, but the fact of her like walking away and not looking back kind of made me think it was Puffy.
Got me on that rebound, rebound, rebound. Catch me on that rebound, rebound, rebound. We go up and down, we get lost and found, we go round and round.
So how could somebody who is so lucky and good at business fail so terribly when it comes to love? Well, I'll be honest. I don't think J-Lo is a total failure when it comes to love. I just think she is a little bit undecisive and she just doesn't waste her time. She falls in love hard and she falls out of love just as harder. So one of the things that stands out about J-Lo's chart is she is a Leo sun at 1 degree. She is also a Libra ascendant, and she has a Scorpio moon at 29 degrees. That 1 degree and that 29 degrees are considered critical degrees. What's also interesting is most of her dominant planets tend to happen in her career house. I think J-Lo has a lot of heart chakra energy. With that Leo element, that heart chakra energy really shows, but she also has a lot of solar plex energy, which makes her very driven, will-powered, and it has a lot of that energy of leadership. I'll be honest, even though she talks about a heartbreak, I think she was the one who was breaking a lot of the hearts.
At this point in your life, what's the most important thing to you?
Jennifer, what really matters to you?
Love. Even though Jennifer Lopez swears that she's a girl who loves to love and she loves hard, there is one thing that she loves just a little bit harder, and that is success. you can't tell me that she doesn't love success. That Leo energy, that energy around career, leadership, and goals is, in all honesty, her dominant factor. She loves it. And she tends to love it a little bit more than some of her relationships. As we see, most of her dominant energy is in her house energy, surrounded by her 2nd and her 10th house and her 12th house. Jennifer Lopez's Leo sun and her Lilith and also her Mercury are all tied into her 10th house. That 10th house is where we really see her in energies of career and also her energy of her legacy and creating a stamp with many people. So while that heart chakra is big, it's also big for business, not just love. And that Mercury makes it so it's really easy for her to communicate her goals, her inspirations. I wasn't surprised that she did a musical. It kind of made me think of Beyonce's Lemonade, but it was definitely a Jennifer Lopez type style film. A little bit more upbeat and not so much focused on the heartbreak. Another thing that really stands out about her chart is in her 2nd house. She has that Scorpio moon, and that energy around the Scorpio moon in the 2nd house is really tied into areas of wealth and also areas of material gains. But she also has her Neptune in it. So I think a lot of times she has this area where she has a hard time managing her energy of emotions, material gains, career, and also that energy of disconnect where she feels very tied into the relationship, but then that Scorpio moon also allows her to hide a lot of her feelings and have that tendency to cut people off. Her 2nd house also transitions over to Sagittarius, where her Mars lays. Her Mars feels very passionate, and it seems like she's able to explore that area, and she has this high philosophy of wisdom and also intrigue. I think Jennifer is more embarrassed of her past relationships because of, with age, she starts to feel like she needs to explain herself. And in all honesty, I don't think she really needs to explain anything, but maybe she feels like people think that she kind of used her sexuality to push her way to the top, as we see that Lilith in the 10th house as well, which possibly, how can you not mix business with pleasure when in all honesty, business is your ultimate goal? What's also interesting about Jennifer Lopez's chart is her Venus in Gemini has a square with her Pluto in Virgo. This makes me feel that area of relationships and communication just comes to a dead halt. Like, in all honesty, I feel like she is definitely the one who just gets up and goes. And she kind of displays that in her musical. I do think that she did have a few great loves in all of this. I do think she had a strong connection with somebody who caused her a lot of turmoil, especially with that energy of the Venus having a direct square against Pluto. It does make me feel like she did have a dark relationship at some point that made her very hesitant to open up again. I do think her relationship with Ben Affleck was definitely one of her greatest loves and continues to be, as they actually broke up for 2 decades and then reunited recently. I think one of the correlations that I really like about their 2 charts when we look at them as a whole is the fact that they are both Leo suns and they also have that Scorpio moon tied in together. They do have a lot of karmic energy that makes them feel very destined to be together. I just really hope that this relationship works out. I do think that Jennifer Lopez tends to be a little bit more solar driven than Ben Affleck, which in some ways could be a little bit too much for him at times, and he may have to find ways to break away from her or feel a little bit more heard. I do think that Jennifer Lopez has found one of the greatest love stories in her life, and that is loving herself and also loving her career. But I do really wish.
When someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, my answer was always in love.
Jennifer Lopez explains that her ultimate goal in life is to be loved, is to find love and to be in a loving, committed relationship. That's basically what she portrays in her musical. I do think that this is true for the most part. However, she tends to have this dynamic where she falls in and out of love quite quickly. When we look at Jennifer relationships, it must be hard because in all honesty, she is considered a high-profile celebrity. She has a lot of energy around fame, success, and being in the public's eye. And it's quite hard to tell which were her most influential relationships in her life because she did have 4 marriages, and between those 4 marriages she also had many boyfriends. So she did have some short-term, long-term, and overall complicated relationships. Some of the things about Jennifer Lopez's birth chart that kind of really stands out to me is the fact that not only is she very heart-centered, but most of her energy tends to kind of formulate at the top area of her chart around her 10th and her 11th house. And her 10th house being a dominant house, but also her second house, which is seen as that energy of career and material gains. I do think that Jennifer Lopez did play the game of passion and business all kind of in the mirage as one. And some of that probably had to do with the Neptune energy that is located in her second house, where she was unable to disconnect that area of business and keep it business related, but it just kind of all tangled in together, especially with her having a Libra ascendant and also a Leo sun. Both of those are really considered energies that are related to heart matters and energies of love. When we look at Jennifer Lopez's lower chart, we see that in her 4th house and her 5th house, there's not that much dominant planet alignment. We also see that when we look at her house of partnerships, she has it in Taurus, which is her 7th house. This energy is also met with Saturn, which is in 8 degrees. So this is a very dominant degree with a very dominant planet. And Saturn is known for that area of restrictions. There might have been some areas where Saturn was taking away some of her partnerships, kind of creating boundaries that she was very strict on. And in all honesty, she probably didn't feel like she should ever compromise on, which I agree with her. I also think that Jennifer Lopez is not the woman that you want to play around with. Like, she's just not. She will basically leave you. She will say goodbye and walk away, especially if you tend to push her boundaries to the ultimate limit. And that might be the reason why she's had so many past loves, is because when her boundaries are pushed, she knows it's time to go. And another thing that really stands out to me about this Saturn energy is this Saturn energy feels very fixed. It also feels very trustworthy. I think that Jennifer Lopez can definitely be trusted in areas of raising her children, having certain structures, certain responsibilities. She really kind of plays that out for everybody to see and mostly for her to see. But there are some things that she will not compromise with, and that's with love. As we see, her Saturn has a direct square with her sun, and we all know that Leo sun.
All those could have been became her sacrifice.
So while Jennifer Lopez has definitely sacrificed some of her areas of relationships, past and even past loves for probably her boundaries and also for areas of who she is and what she stands for, I think it has implemented who she is today. And I don't think that should be something that she should feel embarrassed of or ashamed of, or even feel like she needs to explain, as she is explaining in this musical. What's also interesting about Jennifer Lopez's chart is her Jupiter is in Libra, which is right around that area of her ascendant and kind of borderline on her 12th house. This energy lets me know that she is all about creating a higher purpose in her spiritual presence. So after seeing that, I feel like she is kind of taking this time of balance as we have the North Node currently aligned with Libra, which is centered around that space, whereas making her complete her goals. I feel like she made this memoir to kind of tell her story because she wanted to explain some of her past relationships and some of her past areas, but she's overall concentrating on the here and now. And the here and now is all about Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's birth chart is a little bit similar to Jennifer Lopez's, even though it is not completely identical. It is different. So he is a sun in Leo at 22 degrees, and he has a Pisces midheaven at 19 degrees. It believes that he is a ascendant in Cancer, and he has a moon in Scorpio at 4 degrees. Ben Affleck is a life path of 6, where Jennifer Lopez is a life path of 11. A few things that I like a little bit in Ben Affleck's chart is the fact that his moon in Scorpio is in his 5th house, and that 5th house has a lot of feminine energy. It is known as the area of the woman, the feminine goddess, also the area of children. It is also seen as the area of romance, pleasure, and a little bit of excitement and passionate. The 5th house traditionally is a Leo house, so it's kind of not surprising that he has strong emotional ties to not only a Leo, meaning Jennifer Lopez, but his own areas of self-expression where it feels very similar. I also think with Ben Affleck having his Scorpio moon in the area of the 5th house, they're able to kind of create this energy where they have an emotional base where they can use their area of romance to help raise the children and really have that area of having this new blended family, because both of them are coming from 2 past divorce. Jennifer Lopez was married to Mark Anthony, and Ben Affleck was married to Jennifer Gardner. So there is definitely a area of having this new blended family kind of all mixing in and finding a new here and now presence. What I also want to point out is in his 5th house, it's centered around the area of Scorpio. And we also see his true Lilith or his dark Lilith energy, where I'm not surprised that the woman that he is entangled with, or actually married to now, has strong resemblance of a Scorpio, because we see that area of passion, almost like forbidden fruit, the area of Jennifer Lopez, who not necessarily will hold her assertiveness and be submissive like that Lilith energy was. You know, she's not going to just do what you say easily. And we see that in his 5th house, which to me shows areas of Jennifer Lopez. His Venus is also in his 1st house, which is Cancer, and it has a square with Pluto as well. So I'm not surprised that both of these two had to kind of find some area of transition to really focus. Also, it is said that most of this Venus energy, right? Because Venus is ruled by Libra and Taurus, or Venus rules Taurus and Libra. So I'm not surprised that he is drawn to a Libra rising, especially with this energy being tied into the 1st house, because we have to remember that Jennifer Lopez is also a Leo sun as well as him, and that really shows that dominant spirit energy. But then also with the rising energy and in the 1st house, it really shows the self-awareness, the viewpoint, and the self-confidence, and that energy of new beginnings. So even though Jennifer Lopez was a past relationship, she is the here and now. But I also see
I know what they say about me. About hopeless romantics. That we're weak. And I'm not weak. I learned the hard way. Not all love stories have a happy ending.
While Jennifer Lopez tends to have a lot of her hard aspects in her areas of partnerships, as we see her 7th house has Saturn, Ben's chart is a little bit different. The things that I notice about his chart is that his Saturn is placed in his 12th house and it is aligned with Gemini. I really feel that Ben Affleck's challenges don't really come with areas of the heart center as Jennifer Lopez's does, even though he is a Leo sun as well and a Scorpio moon. His tends to be more centered around emotions that are centered around communication, possible areas of not feeling completely fulfilled, and maybe having an area of a need to constant have reassurance. I feel that even though his Saturn is in Gemini, that doesn't mean he is able to communicate in his relationships like some of his partners wish he had. I also think it's interesting that his Saturn is in Gemini in the 12th house, because we know that the 12th house sometimes has that energy of mindfulness, faith, and areas of spirituality, where he might be sometimes having a lot of abilities and also a lot of disadvantages there, as the Saturn might constrict some of his consciousness. And maybe Ben Affleck tends to be one of those people who lets his thoughts really take him over, especially around areas of emotion and the area of the feminine, as he does have more of a feminine chart than versus J-Lo. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though he is a male. It just shows that he has more areas of emotions and he's not as solar plex heavy. He's kind of a little bit more sacral heavy, where that area of passion, creativity really needs to be expressed. And when he feels like it's not being acknowledged, he might have difficulties in some spaces. I also know that Ben Affleck has had issues with like alcoholism, and it's interesting that in his 12th house we see that Saturn where it has that area of restriction and also that area of boundaries. In their first relationship that happened 20 years ago, there was a lot of talk that they broke up because Ben could not get his shit together. And there was areas of drinking, gambling, and Jennifer Lopez was like, I'm high profile, I'm a celebrity, my career is on the rise, and you are fucking it up. And there's no way I'm going to be around some guy who's basically a Hollywood scrub. I mean, that's why they originally broke up. Some people also say that the reason why they broke up was because there was issues with the paparazzi, and Ben did not like the limelight like Jennifer Lopez does. And I definitely agree with that. He tends to keep his areas more private. And we can see why, because not only is his Scorpio moon in his 5th house, he also has his Neptune in Sagittarius in his 6th house. And Neptune really rules that area of like escapism, daydreaming, and even areas of like intuition, dishonesty, and some might even say addiction. And it being in the 6th house makes me think that there's certain patterns and rituals that kind of keep coming up on the daily. So he tends to leave some certain things a little bit hidden from most people, because that's his personal space, and also because that is his area of escapism. He doesn't necessarily like being out and about and like being very centered in the public eye like Jennifer Lopez does. He wants to keep you guys guessing on what he's doing, and a lot of it has to do with because there might be some carelessness behind it. Hopefully for Ben, Jennifer Lopez will be the dominant energy he needs to kind of break these illusions and break him out of his slumber, as some might say, and let him to really fulfill some areas with intent and full inspiration and aspiration. He may also sometimes be very vulnerable to areas of illusions and things that feel very misleading. He definitely is a little bit more naive than Jennifer Lopez, I will say. And in all honesty, I think her very heavy solar plex is something that he might need to kind of wake him up from that area of delusions in the everyday practices. I do feel that Ben Affleck was one of Jennifer Lopez's most turmoil heartbreaks, that she had a hard time letting go of that past relationship. And one of the reasons why is because his Uranus is in Libra along with his Pluto. This makes me think that his unbalancing and his overall area of rebelliousness and not wanting to conform to the celebrity lifestyle that she so much loved really had a lot of destruction on their past relationship. I ultimately hope that this couple does work out. In all honesty, I wish that they are able to have a long-lasting relationship and Jennifer Lopez is able to walk away from the energy that she feels of not being able to find love, or at least find a long-lasting love. Because let's be honest, finding love is not hard for her. It's just staying in the energy of love and the energy of commitment. So hopefully this all works out for her, and I do wish them the best, but only time will tell with this Leo solar plex driven woman.